Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are online today to launch our Media Trust and Screen Skills Reframing Disability Mentoring Programme. My name is Daisy Church, and I'm the Screen Industry Programme Manager and Producer at Media Trust. We will be audio describing today, so for the sake of people just listening, I'm a white woman with a short blonde, somewhat jaunty bob, and I'm sitting against a glass panel background. I wanted to make everyone aware before we start that live captioning is available for this event. So you can either go on the CC closed captions button or follow the link that I will post now in the chat. And do please message me with any issues at any point. We also have our amazing interpreters here with us today. That's Joe Ross and Julie Hornsby. They will be switching throughout the event, so please do pin them on your screen. And yeah, they are huge thanks to both of them. Thanks as well to all our amazing panelists. I'm so excited. I can't believe I managed to get you all here today. The unstoppable Sean Dilley, the team at BBC 50/50, and especially Lara and Kay. And of course, as ever, the wonderful and responsive funders of this work that we do, Screen Skills. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to their CEO, Seetha Kumar. Thank you, Seetha.
Good morning. I'm a brown woman with a ponytail, and I'm wearing spectacles, and I'm actually sitting in my office, and in the background, you can see the Screen Skills logo. I wanted to introduce this session as the Media Trust and Screen Skills Reframing Disability Mentoring Programme in partnership with BBC 50/50 is an important new programme, which for the first time will recruit disabled mentors to work with disabled mentees. Screen Skills ethos is inclusion, and I'd be the first to say we, as the industry-led skills body, need to do much more to help improve the representation of disabled people in behind-the-camera roles. It is sobering to read data captured by the Diamond Diversity Monitoring System, which shows that there's only been a small increase of 0.9 percentage points in the proportion of disabled people in off-screen TV production roles from 4.5% in 2017 to 5.4% in 2020. If this is the rate of progress, it will be 2028 before the doubling disability target of 9% is met. This means industry will not be representative of the UK working age disabled age population, currently 20%, until 2041 at the earliest. I sit on the board of the Creative Diversity Network and support the ambition to double disability. I, like many, was humbled by Jack Thorne's moving Mick Taggart lecture, where he talked about how TV has failed disabled people. And yet, because of the pandemic and how it has impacted the way we work, we have an opportune moment to be transformative. We can expedite efforts to be inclusive, so disabled people feel their creative potential is utilized for the enrichment of all society. Mentoring could play an important role here. We have seen the power of mentoring, and this is why we have made mentoring a component of training programs such as Trainee Finder and Leaders of Tomorrow, as well as matching 2,500 people through the Screen Skills Mentoring Network. Recent research on skills gaps and shortages show that managers find it difficult to find mid-level and HODs from underrepresented groups compared to new entrants and trainees. Programs such as this aim to address that by focusing on mid and experienced career stage mentees. The Reframing Disability Mentoring Program will also address a shortage of management skills, communication, interpersonal skills, and leadership skills in the screen industries. By investing over £130,000 of funding, we hope to enable 250 people from groups currently underrepresented and working in areas of skill shortages to be supported with mentoring. 3 of the 10 initiatives recently announced will support nearly 60 deaf and disabled mentees. In addition to this program, we're providing funding for 2 mentoring programs with organizations led by disabled talent. Beacon Films, an award-winning production company of filmmakers with learning difficulties, autism, and additional needs, and Triple C, who will be working with deaf, disabled, and neurodivergent writers and directors. At Screen Skills, we work to build a skilled and inclusive workforce. We can do this thanks to industry contributions to our skills funds and invaluable support in kind. The mentoring network, of which this initiative is a part, is supported by the BFI, awarding national lottery funds, and we are grateful for this investment. I will close by wishing all who take part in this program the very best. You can't make great television without investing in the people, and that means all the people.
Thank you so much, Seetha. I'm Sue May Thompson, CEO of Media Trust, and for anyone who's just listening in, I'm Chinese. I have hair that is trying to escape from my ponytail. I'm wearing a bright orange shirt, and my background is my study at home at Hammersmith. On behalf of all of us at Media Trust, thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't already know us, we're a non-profit and we work in partnership with the media and creative sector to give charities, underrepresented communities, and young people a stronger voice. As an organisation, we are passionate about disability. We know from our work with DDPOs and disability organisations like Disability Rights UK, the National Autism Society, SCOPE, and the RNIB that disabled people have felt invisible and devalued throughout the pandemic. Oh, someone can't see me, they said. Is that, Daisy, is there an issue? Do you think I'm on screen?
You're on screen.
Okay, thank you. If we want to change societal attitudes and policies, we need more disability representation. So disability is destigmatized, it's normalized, and it's no longer the Cinderella of diversity and inclusion agendas. And the good news is that it feels like the industry is ready to call time on this. From the support for Jack Thorne's brilliant impassioned speech at the Edinburgh TV Festival, to the response we're seeing for our own initiatives to reframe disability in the media. Our work in this area includes providing media interview training for disabled subject matter experts, because we want to see more disabled people being interviewed on subjects that they are experts in that don't have anything to do with disability. We're also providing disability awareness training to reporters and other content makers so they're more confident about working with disabled talent and they know the kind of reasonable adjustments they should offer without being asked. But disability representation also needs to extend to behind the camera jobs, and that's why we're delighted to be partnering with Screen Skills and the BBC to launch what we believe to be an industry first, a mentoring programme for all disabled mentors and all disabled mentees in off-screen roles. We think Media Trust's approach to mentoring is quite unique. While we do pair individual mentees with mentors, we take a very cohort-based approach, which allows for a lot of interaction and peer-to-peer learning across all the mentees and mentors on the programme. We want our 30 mentees and 30 mentors to graduate in 6 months' time, not just with a good relationship with their one mentor or mentee, but having forged strong bonds with 60 industry contacts who will return your calls, put you forward for opportunities, and have your back. Through the programme, you'll also gain frameworks and tips on effective goal setting, giving and receiving feedback, They're great skills for life, really. And you'll get to hear from inspirational speakers like our fabulous panelists today to boost your motivation and self-belief about how much further your talent can take you. And in terms of the lived experience that we're drawing on to inform and influence the program, I want to give a shout out to Nick Ransom and the neurodiverse media community, which aims to connect, engage, and support those with neurological differences in the media industry. And we also had the wonderful Caroline O'Neill, one of the founders of Deaf and Disabled People in TV, as a mentor on our first Screen Skills mentoring program. We're lucky to have Caroline as an advisor. Believe it or not, we've actually run 4 Screen Skills mentoring programs to date. This will be our 5th. So rest assured, if you do join as a mentor or a mentee, you'll be in very good hands and good company. In closing, big thank you again to Screen Skills and the BBC, our speakers, and everyone who's joined this event today, or who may be watching the recording. Please help us by encouraging any disabled behind the camera talent you know to sign up to the programme. The link is in the chat and applications close at the end of September. I'm handing over now to the wonderful Sean Dilley, who's going to chair the panel. Thank you, Sean. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Now, I need to ask you a question first. Can you all see me, those of you who can see? I'm going to assume you can, all right. So let's start off with a bit of audio description. For those who can't see me, I'm really athletic, full head of hair, good looking. In fact, the model of good looks. But in reality, and I have to say, if you can see me, you'll know that's not true. I'm here. I am a white guy. I'm blind. I'm registered blind. So my eyes kind of might look a little bit darty from time to time, and I'm wearing a navy blue top. And you are in my kitchen, so welcome. I'm so excited about today. Actually, I'm going to keep my opening comments quite short here because we want to hear from our panelists in a moment. But I am the BBC's project lead for something called Reframing Disability, something that we developed alongside the Media Trust, as Sue May, the Chief Executive of Media Trust, pointed out, to deliver training not just to disabled specialists but also to our content makers. And we're still doing that at the BBC. So if there are BBC folk watching this now, or external partners, because I've heard that there are Netflix and ITV folk and all sorts of wonderful people here, email us. We'd love to tell you more about it. Operationally, I'm a correspondent. I was a Panorama reporter, and I know that we cannot do what we do on screen without a little bit of planning, more than a little bit of planning behind the scenes to make us look like we know what we're talking about. And who hires on-screen talent is off-screen talent. So what we're doing today is genuinely transformative, so welcome. What I'd like to do is to kick off today's panel and just invite everybody to speak for 2 minutes, to introduce yourselves one by one and tell us a little bit about why disability representation is something that we need, not just to say is not where it needs to be now, but what the solutions are and why representation is important. So we'll start with David, if we can. David.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Proud. I'm a writer and semi-retired actor. For those that can't see me, I'm in what looks like a storeroom with a load of coat racks behind me. I'm quite geeky. I'm also wearing a hoodie, which I apologize for, but I realized just before this that the window is open and I'm a little bit cold and I can't actually reach up to close it. So I thought either hoodie me or shivering me. I started out as an actor about 15 years ago. Done various different roles and had far too much that I wanted to kind of say. I moved into writing and have discovered that there's barriers to on-screen and there's barriers to off-screen representation. And I'm currently a screenwriter on Coronation Street, which is a lovely job to do. And I'm really passionate about trying to make sure that anybody coming into the industry can see a viable career ahead of them and has all the opportunities that anyone else would have. And I think Jack Thorne's speech was absolutely amazing. And he was a little bit right. I think the industry has failed disabled people, but I think that we've got a bit of a kind of wind behind our sails now. So now's the time to really push and to not take the foot off the gas and to really make sure that we get representation to where we know it should be and where we've known it should be for years.
Thank you, David. Just a quick pointer that in the chat, Lara Ioannidis from the 50/50 project of the BBC has shared details as to how you can, if you're a BBC colleague, sign up to be a mentor, and there will be details there about being a mentee. Just before handing over to Sophie Butler to say a few words, please do tweet about today, share it on LinkedIn. Daisy's going to share the hashtag that we would love you to use in the chat box, and we'll give it again later. So Sophie, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Sophie Butler. Little audio description about me. I'm a young white woman. I've got long black hair, and my background is actually my home office. So I'm sorry if you hear my dog in the background at any point. Little bit about me. I'm 25. I'm a full-time wheelchair user from a spinal injury, and I actually work in my industry is a bit different. I work within the online creator influencer industry, which kind of has a little bit of a dirty name behind it, but I'm really proud of the work that we do. I work mainly within the fitness industry, the fashion industry, but I also write a lot on Instagram about disability rights. I have a weekly series called Sunday School, where we basically talk about every week a different topic to do with disability. So whether that's to do with language, fashion, fitness, gym barriers, things like that. We cover all kinds of things. I worked with Gymshark, and I was actually the first disabled Gymshark athlete to join the team. And then in January of 21 this year, I was also the first wheelchair user in the UK to cover Cosmopolitan magazine. So that's just a little bit about me and who I am. Representation is really important to me. I think really hit me when that Cosmopolitan cover came out, and I had so many messages from young women just saying what it meant to see a woman who looked like them on the cover. And obviously it was the first time something like that has happened in the UK, and it really was such a monumental moment. And seeing all of these young women going out to buy the cover and knowing that it kind of gave them that little bit of joy and a little bit of hope for the future, and that they could see disability in places where we don't normally see it, that really kind of inspired me to really go full throttle with the rest of my career.
May I just say as well, for anybody tuning in, Sophie does have a fantastic YouTube channel where she's not just the odd question here or there, she answers everything. Check it out if you get a second. Kerry.
Good morning. Hello. It's so lovely to be here. I am Kerry Burnell. I am the BBC's Ambassador for Disability. I'm a white woman in my 40s, looking slightly tired this morning, but I have got some lippy on. So hopefully that's keeping me looking vibrant and fresh. I'm at home in my dining room. This is definitely the nicest wall in my house. It's covered in butterfly wallpaper. And I also have a bookcase, which is massively overstacked with books. I have a disability, which is that I have an upper limb difference, which is rather long and quite a new title. So I just refer to it as having one hand. I've had many different hats throughout my career. So I began as an actor. I'm also a published author, and I am an emerging screenwriter, but very slow to emerge. There's a lot of mist in front of me. I'm really delighted to be in my current role as the BBC's Ambassador for Disability. And the reason is because when I was 5 years old, I was offered the role of the stall keeper in the Christmas Nativity, which I was highly offended about. And I said, no, if I can't be the star of Bethlehem, I'm not going to be in the show at all. Needless to say, I ended up playing the triangle in The Wings. So that didn't really turn out how I'd anticipated. But if you view that experience through an inclusion and diversity lens, you could say that I have been advocating for better representation of disabled actors since I was 5 years old. It has taken me 37 years to be in a role where I am employed specifically to do that and to champion better representation right across the board, pan-industry, for all disabled talent. And I am thoroughly proud of the work that I'm hoping to do and achieve in the future. So it's a real pleasure and joy to be here this morning, reframing disability.
Fantastic. And that's obviously the whole nature of today. Now, Goz, if you've got a second, but just before we do go to Goz, just a reminder, we do want to see plenty of social media activity about this. We want to see some of the quotes that people are using, because if we are serious about embracing the moment, doing what Jack Thorne said in the McTaggart lecture to spread the word. Well, actually, it will take us 20 seconds to talk about some of the speakers today. And executives, commissioners, please note, you've got some fantastic talent here. We're not hard to find if you look. Goz.
Hi, and good morning, everybody. Yes, my name is Goz. I work for the BBC in children's education, but most of my career has been within children's television. I worked in Manchester, then I worked in London, and I've come back up again to Manchester, based in Salford. I currently am a journalist within digital content, work on an app called Own It, a website I should say, called Own It, which helps children with their digital safety and online behaviour. So that's my day job. But me as an individual, I'm an artist, photographer, filmmaker, and I've dabbled in a bit of comedy. And in, you know, whatever I do, I'm always kind of champion, shouting about representation through my photography, through my comedy, and through my filmmaking. So it's just ingrained, and I've had great role models through my life that has made me think this way. So yeah, over to you, Sean.
Goz, that's fantastic. I apologise, just occasionally when I'm speaking, I'm hearing lots of your wonderful comments through a screen reader in my head, but I'm used to a little bit of what we call open talk back anyway. I just really want to stress as we go into our first bulky question, you know, when we talk about the importance of the off-screen roles, again, I can only say that an awful lot of colleagues from across organisations I've noticed in my Netflix, Sky, ITV, we're all people who have the opportunity to decide what we commission. So that's definitely worth considering how we're thinking about these things. A term that I hear an awful lot when hosting these kind of discussions and speaking to disabled colleagues is that disability can sometimes feel like it's the Cinderella of diversity and inclusion, the last thing that's considered by commissioners and executive. Now, in fairness, they would say that's not the case at all. You know, we need to know how we can source talent and to, I would suggest, include people in terms of all roles so that we have a diversity of decision making. So thinking panel about the importance of overcoming barriers. So what are the barriers, and crucially, what are the solutions to make a real difference? Let's kick off with.
Oh God, what are the barriers? I think the main one is an unconscious bias that we are lesser, or that we are less experienced, that we're high risk. There's been things where the minimum criteria is to do 2 short films, and I've had to do like 4. So it's that over proving that you can handle it. And you know, if you've lived your entire life thinking that disability is a weakness and you know and it is lesser, you're really going to hand £1 million to that person to do that project. So I think we're battling a massive unconscious bias. I think we're louder than we've ever been, and I think the final stage is commissioners and accountability at board and executive level at organisations. I think we've kind of reached that level of going all the way up and people banging heads against brick walls to make that progress. And we've seen certain projects and certain things that have changed the game. And I think we've finally got to the upper part of every broadcaster, every funding organisation. And now there aren't all of the excuses that we'd heard before, they're all absolutely redundant. You're either part of the change and part of, you know, this new wave of disabled narrative and disabled people telling their own stories, or you're obsolete. And, you know, and the talent, you know, when you call on them in a year's time will not be there because they'll be working with other people that have commissioned it. So if you're not commissioning disability content, disabled-led content now, you're going to have a job in about a year's time because all of those people are going to be working on other things. Is kind of I think that's the main thing, is that we've worked up to that level now, and it's time to really make that difference.
So you're missing an opportunity if you don't commission. That's a really interesting point, David. One for audience members to think about in discussions you're having when you tell people it was a brilliant panel and you should have been there. But we're going to tweet about it. We're going to share on LinkedIn, so it's going to be good. Sophie, what do you think some of the solutions to this are? Because it's fine to say, okay, that, you know, as people, as disabled people, maybe the opportunities don't always appear to be there, but you know, presumably there are all sorts of opportunities, and sometimes it feels like there's a bit of a communication barrier where people don't realise that there's amazing talents out there. How do we realise that across all of our influencing and media content, and in terms of, I'm thinking, off-air talent here as well?
Yeah, I always kind of like to think of it of almost, it's a bit like that, it's like a cycle. So so as a disabled person, you might go, oh, well, that there's not a lot of disabled people here, but that cycle kind of carries on because there's not been disabled people in the space, say either because of physical inaccessibility or because of different stigmas and prejudices. But the less that people see disabled people in spaces, it's not gonna improve, because that cycle just sort of carries on. I mean, looking back from my own experiences in across the influencer industry and working with brands, that's primarily what I do. I work with brands. It's a really, really hard one to solve. And I always kind of like catch myself sometimes like over a laptop, like trying to pull my hair up, being like, how can we just solve the issue? And I'm such a problem solver. I just kind of want the answers and get it done. But I don't think this is one of those issues. I always find myself on every shoot that I do, every campaign that I do, kind of a new issue crops up and I kind of have to solve it when it crops up. And I think this is one of those things of like, I think all the time we're coming across it's an umbrella of issues related to disability, but there's always new little things cropping up. But I think in terms of sourcing out talent, I think really the onus really has to be on brands and commissioners. I say brands, sorry, because that's just primarily where I work with, but brands and commissioners and whoever you're wanting to hire more disabled talent to actually do the legwork and look for disabled talent, because it is out there. I say, for example, one of the big brands that I work with is Gymshark, and we're actually hosting a private event organised by myself this weekend just for disabled people, either in the fitness industry or who work in fitness or who are just interested in fitness. And it's just an event just for disabled women, and it's an extension of something that I did with them for International Women's Day. But that really has come from me being inside the brand and saying, look, we need to push for this. We need to make the effort to do this. And I think a lot of brands and commissioners really kind of just expect the talent to just kind of appear. But I think one thing that really kind of has to be made clear is that, like, I think a lot of disabled talent, me included, I have been given opportunities or offered opportunities before where I thought, oh, well, I don't know if I really belong in that space. And I don't know if that job's really for me because I've never seen anyone do it before. And I think that kind of fear does kind of live within the disabled community. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I've experienced that myself. And I think the onus really does have to come on brands and commissioners to kind of really source disabled talent.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say if anybody's watching this and thinking, well, maybe there's not disabled talent on screen, or crucially, as far as our partnership with Screen Skills and the Media Trust off screen, drop me an email and we'll get you in touch with people at the BBC Creative Diversity team and industry colleagues, because that's what today is about, to do that. And I think, you know, Sophie, I think they're very interesting points. I'm interested, Carrie, from a BBC sort of ambassador point on disability. I noticed this as well, you know, reporting for Panorama, doing news and so forth. Often, sometimes some of the language around disability feels a little bit clunky. I don't know how many times I've explained to people that special needs has become a pejorative term, but I have very, very decent people who do care about things saying to me, well, I don't understand why it's a pejorative term. We hear parents using that. So I'd be interested in what you think the benefits to the BBC and the industry more widely would be if we have more disabled people in those production and decision-making roles.
Well, it's important to remember that language is always changing, and as creatives, we have to be abreast of that. Sophie makes a really excellent point about having disabled people in positions of power, really regardless of your industry, you know, whether it's a brand or whether it's a channel or an independent, whatever sort of content you're creating. If you've got someone, you know, at the helm who has the lived experience of disability, then you'll have the waterfall effect of everything starting to shift and change, more disabled people being brought in at the decision-making moments, you know, right when crucial things are being decided, and you will just organically have better representation. I think we have to remember that historically, disabled people have had their narratives and their truths and their stories silenced, or we've had our stories told by people who don't have the authentic experience of disability. And so what we're coming up against continually is bad representation, and that sort of, you know, we're either heroes or we live lives that are full of pity and shame, and there's no hope. And there's not really been a middle ground, probably until now. You know, we have moments of brightness, but I think, you know, now we are on the cusp of a really amazing change, and language has to be part of that. Just take the term neurodivergent. I mean, even 3 months ago, I thought the correct label was neurodiverse, but actually neurodivergent is the right term. Well, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter that I didn't know that. It's just good that I've been educated by my wonderful colleagues at the BBC, people like Kay Ashton and Nicola Bardet, who are part of my amazing team, just so that I can be really sensitive to the people that I'm talking to, and that I can really understand how they identify, because different people have different relationships to language and to labels at different points in their lives and their careers. So we can all just be super aware of that. And I actually think that the BBC does have a really excellent policy on trying to accommodate everyone's identity. Of course, there's still more that you can do, but you know, we have things like the language guide, and there is, you know, I think there's a real awareness of trying to improve things, and, you know, and just be more inclusive.
Goz, thank you very much for that, Kerry. I think they're very important points, and undoubtedly, as the BBC as ambassador, you're going to be working very hard on these points. Goz, you know, obviously this is a real concern for us in content making, is that there are so many people who are committed to representing disability better. Is there a danger sometimes that, you know, people can rush to cover a topic about disability and therefore think, just because that topic is covered and it involves disabled people, that somehow we're representing people well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kerry just covered it, kind of covered it slightly. Yeah, it is really important that we do have people who are disabled, who have that lived experience within those spaces, because just by saying or by doing a program, you don't get the nuances, you don't get what should or shouldn't be done, or just the empathy. Sometimes it can be just simply down to the empathy of the program and what we shouldn't be doing. But I just want to come back to what Sophie was saying. Yeah, it is about opportunity, because I just think you can have talent, but if you don't nurture that talent in the first place, where do you find the talent? You know, you know, I can take from personal experience. I've been trapped in roles where I've seen my counterparts not just flying because they've already had that nurture and that development. So yes, the talent's out there, but if you don't nurture that talent, you're not going to find it in, you know, the brands are not going to find it because you've not got the experience. So it's a twofold thing. We need to nurture it, and we need to have people making the programs so they don't make the silly mistakes and the silly, just, you know, the things that they say that were incorrect in the first place when they're speaking to the participants, and also just the way they portray us anyway. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, Goz, the empathy rather than sympathy model. And certainly when I'm training younger journalists or content makers as part of the reframing disability training that we do, we try and say, look, imagine that you are being the person written about. You know, for instance, I won't name the charity, but I noticed a really excellent video last night in the digital media sphere where they were telling the story of a young girl who'd received an iPad to help with their disability, but the first voice we heard is mum, yet there was a perfectly articulate voices later in there. And again, it's just, I think, sometimes transforming how we think about things, whether we are you know, imagining we are telling the story from the point of view of the disabled person or someone speaking for the disabled person is quite important. I want to move on to mentor. Go, please.
I was just going to say, because a lot of people making these programs don't even know disabled people, so you can't have that experience. You know, you've never come across disabled people, they've never had contact with disabled people, so they're doing it from that viewpoint. So yeah, empathy is important. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're not interrupting. It's really important. I mean, I think, you know, all of these things, I stress again, whether it's off screen, which is the focus of this project, or on screen or whatever, contact us. If you're saying, look, we really want to do better in terms of disabled representation, we're the public service broadcasters of the BBC, and I'm really proud of that. So contact us, we're here to help. I want to move on to mentoring in a moment. So I just want a quick 30 seconds off each of the panelists, if that's okay. You know, so the BBC, I would maintain we don't have quotas. We have the 50-2012 on gender, ethnicity and disability. But our Director General, Tim Davey, particularly we're talking about disability here and 12%, which we recognise is significantly under the 20% of working age population and the 25% of all of our audiences actually. So it's 1 in 4. So he says, look, that's a minimum, it's not a target. So with that said, and I stress, we do not do quotas at the BBC. That's not what we do. But do we think that a quota system would be good or bad, David?
Yeah, I might take it slightly longer than 30 seconds, but yes, it is. And I think that we need to change the conversation entirely. It's all just wrong. I think the figure we need to go for is 100%, as in disabled artists get to be artists 100% of the time. It is not our job to educate people. I don't want to have one more conversation about a ramp or language. You know, these are things like, if you don't know, pay somebody to do training. You know, it is not our job to educate people as we go. It's unfair. I have enough energy to do a job and to do that job well, not to also do all of these other things that able-bodied artists just don't have to do. So it should, you know, I realized that I was spending 80% of my time as an advocate, 20% as a content creator. And I've purposely this year switched it and gone, no, I want to be a creative, you know, rather than talking about doing the job, you know, and I realize that I'm in a very rare position to be able to do that because of opportunity. But that should be, everybody should be able to do that. You know, if you don't know what you're doing with access, there are people out there, pay them. But I think what we've done as an industry is everyone's done stuff for free. And really and truly, I don't care what you call me, as long as you pay me for the work that I'm doing, you know, and we can sort out everything else over a cup of tea and a biscuit and sit down and talk about it. But we have to end the exploitation of disabled people. And if by now you're an executive or you're somewhere in some grade or job, and you're like, I don't know disability, I don't know how to talk to disabled people, that is something you need to work on, and you need to pay people to come in and do that. You don't put that on the next artist that you're putting in a show or that you've got to write something.
David, excellent point. You've worked for where you are, so you have every entitlement to approach it any way you want. So just a quick 10-second then. Quotas and targets, good thing or a bad thing?
Good thing. We need them until they become redundant. That's
a really good point. Need until we become redundant. Sophie, what's your take on this?
I was just nodding the whole time David was talking. I think he made some fantastic points and I entirely agree with him, to be honest. I think he kind of really summed it up really well, especially of, you know, the whole concept of putting the onus on the disabled person when I'm at a shoot or I'm helping with a campaign or working on a campaign. I want to be there as a creative and not as a disabled liaison, if that's the right word. There have been times where I've been on shoots and the care has been abhorrent. I'm lucky I have management now, but for a majority, I'd say whole of my career till very, very recently, I've looked after and done all of this myself. So there have been times on shoots where I've wanted to just sit there and cry, to be honest, because of the way that I've been treated and the things that I've experienced. But you then have back in your head, keep it professional. I don't want to, well, especially being a woman as well, I don't want to be seen as the crazy crying woman on set. So you have to process all of that. And it's a really, really hard thing to do. And I don't think people understand how emotionally draining it is. And I think a lot of the time, sometimes I've internalized it as well. But yeah, to come off the back of what David said, I think he made some really, really good points. And in terms of quotas as well, it's a really hard one there, and I think it does help us in terms of getting the numbers through the door, but then at what point does it become redundant, and at what point are you just getting the numbers through the door rather than just seeing this disabled talent for the talent that it is, like, and just being good talent?
I think it's Nigel Honey I heard in my ear saying the problem with schemes is they don't need to pay work. I think it's variable, Nigel, just in the comments, in as much as, you know, we have some successes of that at the BBC. We're looking at some other ways forward. But ultimately, you know, I speak from personal experience. I'm someone who doesn't share, like, really doesn't share pretty much anything to do with where I'm anxious about something that might be related to my disability. I plucked up the courage to ask for a producer to come. I tend to do on screen mostly, but I'm making a radio package later this week, and I said, no, I just need somebody to come and lend a hand. And I feel more comfortable than, say, I would have done at another organisation I previously worked at, where I felt that maybe sometimes that was even used against you, and that happens, right? So, Kerry, obviously with the BBC hat on, you know, we stress we don't do quotas. It's a loaded term, isn't it? But should we be having targets, and how do we enforce them?
Well, I would like to think that I'm more than just my hat, as everyone is more than just their label. So perhaps not with that hat on. From a personal viewpoint, I think that data is important because it shows you exactly what's happening. And so therefore, quotas would be important too. I just want to pick up on what Sophie so eloquently and brilliantly expressed, and also David, is just that onus and that emphasis that's put upon the disabled talent to really advocate for their own rights. And that's really why, you know, this is the point of the panel, is to talk about the importance of off-screen representation. And if you get the off-screen right, then you end up with on-screen talent who are better supported and who can arrive at a set and don't feel completely intimidated and really, you know, almost gaslit just for raising their hand and saying, actually, you've written this script about me, and I know that I have the same disability as my character, but you've written it completely wrong, and I don't feel like this is a portrayal of my life or anyone's life who I know with my shared disability. Could we please change it? You know, I'm in my 40s, it's fairly easy for me to have the confidence and the power to do that now. And in fact, I've always done it throughout my own career, just because that's the sort of person that I am. But it's hard to do, especially if you're a young actor, and it does take, you know, an extra ounce of courage, and we shouldn't be expecting disabled people to continually do that. Another point Sophie made is that before she had good representation, she was having to do that for herself continually. And I would just like to flag, especially if we have any agents watching, disabled people historically have not had great representation because it's hard. It's hard to get a disabled actor or a disabled writer work. And the agents don't want to go through that amount of rejection that we are facing in our lives daily. And so then if disabled talent is not picked up right at the beginning, no matter which creative industry they work in, they are then having to do all of that work for themselves. And it can be emotionally draining and exhausting. The other thing that happens is, you know, when a producer or a commissioner suddenly goes, oh yes, you know, we've got this brilliant idea, we want to make this film and we want half the cast to be disabled, or we're going to tell this really beautiful and emotive and nuanced and graceful and challenging story about disability. Then they go to the casting directors go to the agents that they work with all the time, and the agents don't have the talent on their books. And then everyone is scrabbling around going, where is the disabled talent? And it is there. We are just not being given access to even get through the door at the audition.
I think it's a really good point, Kerry. The other thing is you need to look for disabled talent. It's not going to magically appear, because if you turn up with, you know, somebody who's a wheelchair user, or, you know, if I turn up with a guide dog, it's easy to think, well, that there might be challenges here, but actually turn it on its head and think, how can we accommodate that? Goss, in a moment, I'm going to ask you about targets and quotas. Just to give everybody a little bit of a timing update, we've got one more question for the panel off the back of this about mentoring, okay? So we are going to try our best to run as close to time as possible, but the hashtag for this on social media is reframing disability. You can hear, can't you? There are so many discussions here. Please reach out to us. Goz, if you can, 30 seconds just on targets. So they're a good thing. And if we have them, how do you actually make sure they're enforced?
Slightly unfair. I will try and be 30 minutes, but slightly unfair. Everybody else.
No, Goz, you can use it longer if you like. I'm just mindful that you've got so many wonderful folk.
No, I was going to say, I think broadcasters, production companies have had it too easy for far too long. There needs to be quotas. End of. You know, if you enforce it financially and make it a bit more awkward, they'll do something about it. There'll be a plethora of disabled talent coming out of the woodwork to direct things, to write things. But if you don't make it difficult for people, they're not going to do it. Take, for example, if you just the quotas of getting diversity within any industry, the easiest way to increase your diversity is employ women. We're easy. We can just employ women and then you've up to quotas. But what about the other protected characteristics? It's so much harder, but it's just, they're not prepared to do it always, or it's just a bit too difficult to find those Black talent, those disabled talent. So yeah, quotas.
But they're important. What you say is really important, because I've certainly heard, and I won't say which organisation, I've heard someone saying these words, what is diversity anyway? I've employed more women. You're quite right that there's intersectionality, Goz, isn't there? So I'm just wondering, we'll kick off with you actually, if that's okay, Goz. How important is it for disabled people off screen, in particular, but on screen as well for that matter, to have disabled mentors to look after them? And also, have you ever had a good mentoring relationship that you remember?
Yeah, so first of all, when I first joined the industry, my first person was just a role model. She was amazing. My first disabled boss, and she was amazing. And I just thought, I want to be like her. And she was an exec. And I've never had somebody who has been disabled as an exec who's given me that kind of encouragement. Go, oh my God, this industry is for me. And then more recently, I've had a fantastic woman who wasn't disabled as a mentor. And it was just, I think sometimes when you know, there's two types of mentorships. You can have it, you can be like, you know what you want, and like that person can get you from A to B. And there's another type where you don't really know what you want, and you're just trying to go, I just need some support. I need you to just guide me. Yeah. And that was the mentor that I had, and she was brilliant, because I'm looking to change direction in my career, and it was the right person at the right time. And she worked in production, in Silent Witness. And it would just open my eyes to how a good mentor can just really help you.
Absolutely. No, I apologise in advance to the panelists we have with us. I'm going to come to everybody for a very quick answer. We are over time. I'm going to mitigate it by saying this has been too darn interesting. Hashtag reframing disability. Damon Rose in the comments says that the word talent is not often enough associated with disabled people. Discuss in the chat box. And Kerry, briefly, if you ever had a really excellent mentoring relationship that you can think of?
No, I've never been sort of officially mentored, but I think similar to what Goz was saying just early on in my career, some of the women, disabled and non-disabled, who were already working or who were just around me and who just had that really upbeat and positive attitude, and who didn't try and shut me down. You know, if I would say, oh, I want to be an actor and I want to do this and I want to star in a massive film, they wouldn't say, well, it's not really very realistic, is it? In particular, I worked for an amazing casting director who is absolutely fabulous, called Francesca Green. And she was really pioneering for inclusion and diversity 20 years ago, for no reason other than she's an amazing woman and that's what she set out to do. And I was really lucky. I met her at an audition, and then she took me on as her assistant. And that just opened my eyes to so many different ways of working in the industry. And then I also saw the prejudice from the inside as well. And I saw the work that she was trying to do to try and change casting across all diversity. Yes, she wasn't officially my mentor, but she was and is a huge inspiration to me.
Well, she sounds absolutely fantastic. Do pass on the details. David, we're going to come to you in a second. I'm just going to say details of how to sign up as a mentor or a mentee are in the chat box. Please take a look at it and do make sure we are social media in #ReframeDisability.
Sure.
Sophie, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but yeah,
Sure.
sorry.
Hello, sorry, I'm just going to jump in because we've had some really interesting questions in the Q&A.
This is Daisy Church for anybody not sure who's speaking, by the way, sorry.
This is Daisy Church, the Media Trust Screen Industry Program Manager speaking, and we've had some really interesting Q&A questions, and I'm aware we've only got 7 minutes left, so I'd love to, sorry Sean, just jump in and actually just we've had a couple of questions surrounding the issue of disclosure and at what point to an employer, this is for both on-screen and off-screen talent, obviously some are invisible, some are visible, at what point, we've been asked by Michelle, would you advise disabled talent to disclose their disability to a potential employer? And if you would advise them to disclose it, when? Is this at CV stage, application, interview? I'm going to go to David because I know Sean was going to go to him next. David, do you have a take on that?
Disclose it straight away if it's an issue you don't want to be working with them. There are more than enough people that will work with you, and you need to be working in an environment and with people that are supportive and helpful. And if something like that's going to put them off, you don't want to go there. It's better to rip that band-aid early and not go down a road of kind of putting yourself in harm's way, I would say.
Wonderful, amazing. And Goz, it looked like you possibly had something to add to that. Do you have any thoughts?
No, I had experience when they didn't know when I got to the interview and it was totally inaccessible and they didn't get the job. So yeah, disclose it straight away.
Amazing. Thank you so much, both. I think that's a very clear answer. Disclose and avoid if you don't get a good response. Brilliant. Thank you so much. And then we have a related question actually from David, which is a lot of people with neurodivergences try and mask, obviously, and react like a neurotypical person. And how does a neurodivergent person kind of let employers know that they are in need of support and to kind of take that diagnosis seriously, even if they are kind of masking? So I guess it's related to disclosure in a way. So Carrie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm dyslexic, so I suppose I am neurodivergent, but I would say that, you know, if you're masking, and I don't know for certain, but I would more associate that with someone who's on the autistic spectrum. So I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of the autistic community. But, you know, within the BBC, we have something called the Disability Passport, which was an initiative first thought up by the amazing Kay Ashton. And that is a document which has all of your reasonable adjustments, all the support you might need, or just all of the characteristics of your disability profile listed in one place, so that you're not having to tirelessly explain your needs to an employer, and you can just give them that document. They can see, all right, great, we need to do this. Okay, let's get it moving. And hopefully they would make all of those adjustments before you join the team. And if that doesn't happen, or, you know, if the reasonable adjustment is late, you've got something in, you know, written down, you've got something on paper, you've got a physical document that says, oh, well, actually, that, you know, remember, this is how I need things to be done, and this is the support that I need in order that I can shine.
Can I just come in, Daisy? I did a film with a neurodivergent child back in the autumn, and one thing I learned about being on the shoot is, like, you know, even the little things of actually just giving descriptions of who the production crew are. So it just eliminates that anxiety before you actually film with them, you speak to them, and you just, so I totally agree, just back up with what Carrie was saying. But it's just the small details that make a difference to everybody, whatever disability they have.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I think, yeah, it comes down to care, doesn't it? And Kerry, as you say, that not having to repeat that labour as well, which Sophie flagged at the beginning. And I just wanted to say thank you, all of you, for this labour, for appearing for us today. And Sean, I just wanted to come to you for maybe your final point to the panel before I wrap up.
I think, to be fair, I would just like to say, to use the opportunity to thank everybody who's done something today by being here. And that might sound a very small thing to do, but it is really important, because the ask that we have is please tell people about this. Please do the social media hashtag reframing disability. Only, I think, 2 tweets so far, so please do that. We need to spread the word wide and far. You've got some amazing talent in front of you here on this panel. Everybody speaks with such passion, so please do follow all of the panel on social media. Thank you all so much for your patience, me rushing you along, and thank you to everybody for listening. It's now over to everybody here within the industry to decide whether we do the right thing or to choose whether not to, because if I can just fit one more platitude in, whether we are disabled or not, everybody in this room is one disability or health condition away from disability or further disability. So please, let's keep on talking.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Sean. And yeah, just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you so much, David, Goz, Sophie, Kerry. A huge thank you to Julie and Joe, our tireless interpreters, and sorry for my spotlighting woes at the beginning. Thank you all so much for being here and giving us your pre-lunch time. We really appreciated it. And yeah, there will be a recording available for anyone who's having Wi-Fi issues. I will send it to all attendees. And thank you so much. And as Sean said, you can follow all our panelists, and you can also follow media.trust on Twitter. And Sean is at Sean Dilly News. Thank you so much, Sean, in particular. You are fabulous and unstoppable, and it's a privilege to be working with you on this. So thank you.
And sign up as a mentor or a mentee. That's my last words.
Exactly. The link is in the chat just above for the mentee form, and the mentor form has just gone in the chat. So thank you so much. And please do get in touch. My email is also in the chat now. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Thank you so much.